Hello, everybody. Today is Sunday, February 25th, and we bring you episode 83 of Block Digest at block height. Whoopsies, script blocker. Some block that will, oops, I guess we don't know what block height it is, guys. The whole universe came crashing down.
Goodness, at least you have a script blocker now.
Safety first.
All right. But we got Mr. Rick joining us today with a fresh cup of coffee.
Hey everybody, how are y'all doing this morning or evening, wherever y'all are at?
JW chilling on a beach.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Miss Janine as usual.
I only have a cucumber.
What?
Well, Rick has coffee. I don't drink coffee, so I have a cucucber.
Oh,
okay. That makes sense.
Right, we're gonna.
That's good.
Rick, what's wrong with you, man?
Dude, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. This is round 2 for coffee. I'll do that intermittent fasting stuff, so coffee's pretty essential in the morning here.
No, I was just talking about the look on your face after Janine said that. So I'm just thinking, what's wrong with you, man? What's going on in that melon, dude?
Well, no, I was thinking cucumber water, but I just heard cucumber. I was wondering, but I just think cucumbers are refreshing. They're refreshing, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's like the way I get water, because I also have another drink, but it's very boring.
All right, let's stop wasting this cucumber talk. But you're right, they are refreshing.
And Acmix, are you able to breathe?
I'm here. I'm alive. I made it. I'm not late, am I?
All right. Well, if you give me a split second, everybody, we're going to move into the first story.
Now stop sputtering like a wet toaster and get busy. When the Dominator is operational again, we shall seize control of the world. Stop surrendering and listen to me.
It is too dangerous, Commander. There could be dire consequences.
There will be dire consequences for you if you do not obey my orders. You twin twats. They're escaping.
That's brilliant.
That's perfect.
So, what's this dum-dum doing? He's screaming, rabble-rousing for a proof of work change, just as we have competition coming into the space. Why? In my personal opinion, because he has no clue what the hell he is talking about. Like, Bitmain is literally rolling in cash. They are diversified into half a dozen or so other cryptocurrencies as far as ASIC manufacturing. And as I have ranted many times on this show, are trying to branch out into deep learning ASICs, which I can see no use for other than applying to Chinese government surveillance, which kind of implies, if my read of that situation is right, a contracting relationship with the Chinese government. So, in what world is changing Bitcoin's proof of work and destroying all of Bitmain's competition going to help take Bitmain down? Anybody have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't quite understand, like you're saying, how exactly this was going to help, the current situation. Like we were saying earlier before the show, like this conversation is only relevant if, Bitcoin is got a real problem with mining centralization, which, that's never really been proven. There's been experiments and tested back in, 2015, 2016. There was questions about that, but, that's where proof of work change discussion should be relevant. Like right now, it's like you're saying, there's new competition coming on board, and these miners have already been designed, but they haven't been shipped. And, you got Bitmain, who is moving into other rounds of development. It would just wreck all this competition and allow Bitmain to continue their monopoly and move into these other sectors at the same time, just totally dominating the market. For the record, people listening, the guy talking about this, Cobra, is one of the guys running Bitcoin.org. And I think it's highly suspect. The guy is I imagine he's under pressure from Bitcoin.com people and people like that, to where I wouldn't be surprised if there's some back channel discussion about payment and, kind of pushing this narrative, because it really doesn't make sense at this point in time. I mean, like, we could discuss the possibility of how it should be done if that sort of problem occurs again. But like in the history of Bitcoin, that already happened. We're moving past that. So like the discussion of it now, just, it really seems ridiculous, and it's not really relevant at all to today's discussion in Bitcoin.
I would say it's more than doesn't make sense. It is the worst time to do this. Like you can't pick a worse time, a more irresponsible time to do anything like this. It doesn't make any sense. If you were to just, do a proof of work change right now, Bitmain totally has the upper hand. The other competition's not even, they haven't even got their stuff out to sale yet. Like this is actively going to hurt decentralization. Like what the hell?
And like that aside, just like there are so many reasons I am against this and think it is outright retarded. But like one of the chief ones is just like Bitcoin is supposed to be a politically neutral, decentralized platform. Everything else aside, like it boggles my mind that people out there do not appreciate specifically changing the protocol to attack one company, whether you like that company or not. I sure as hell don't. That completely undermines what Bitcoin is trying to achieve. It is interjecting politics and personal opinions over a capitalist entity into the design decisions for the protocol itself. And that just completely undermines like what the hell Bitcoin is even for. And real quick, just another thing I think Janine wants to touch on is Cobra's role in the ecosystem, like period.
Yeah, this was something that David Harding tweeted, I think yesterday. Yes, yesterday. And it's basically, if you don't understand what exactly the request that he made there in the command line, it's basically saying he basically asked for a log of authors of commits to the bitcoin.org repo, which includes no merges. That means you weren't like merging someone else's contribution. And so this is a list of commits by author. And as you can see, Cobra is down at 43 commits, which, number of commits it's not necessarily the best representation of how much work someone's put in, because it's entirely possible that someone could have, put a lot more work into a fewer number of commits. But in general, if someone has more commits, that means they've been more active. So you can see kind of a hierarchy there of who's been contributing the most to bitcoin.org as a place to get resources about Bitcoin. David Harding is up there. Even Luke DeJure is there. Vladimir Vandelon doesn't have too many, but definitely Cobra is not at the top list. So for him to be making any kind of statement on, if he is attempting to make a statement on behalf of bitcoin.org as a whole, which I think treating websites as political entities is a very dangerous thing, as we saw what happened with Bitcoin.com, which was taken over and used as a political tool for Bitcoin Cash. I don't think that any website, just because it has a very easy to find domain, very easy to for people to get to, because it's Bitcoin.com or Bitcoin.org. I don't think it should be used in this manner, especially if it's done by someone who, even though they are a co-owner of the website, they are not obviously the only voice involved with that project.
And real quick, his response here, like this is like, Janine said, the number of commits is not a guarantee indication of how much work is went into things, but he's literally like saying nobody is like debating the ideas. They're just resorting to personal attacks. I actually spent about 20 minutes talking to Cobra in the Bitcoin core Slack yesterday. He is not debating ideas. He's literally sticking his head in the sand and ignoring counter arguments. Like the fact that this would destroy competition, he ignores. The fact that Bitmain is literally rolling in billions of dollars and is the most capitalized ASIC manufacturer on the planet, he ignores. He, instead of seeing that they would be the best capitalized to dominate a new ASIC even more heavily, he says that proves his point that we need to change a proof of work. And how to unravel the logic there, I can't even begin because I don't see any. And like like we're kind of being a little redundant with the second Under the Microscope JW did. I highly recommend you check that out. But even like he says this in there too. Like Cobra is just being a propagandist. He is the one who is not engaging with counter arguments or having a reasoned debate. He is just asserting things and ignoring all counter arguments, and then crying that people are personally attacking him. Like, I mean, this whole situation is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you quickly point out, because Rick said there's a statement in that thread where someone pointed out that one of the things Cobra enabled on Bitcoin.org was Google Analytics.
It's the top tweet, actually, at the bottom part of the original tweet. It says there that what is major contributes was Google to track page views, reducing server security, and gratuitous pontification. So, I mean, I guess like the commits themselves were not really something as far as what is Bitcoin all about. And that's where it's like you're saying, as far as he's not debating the ideas have been debated. They're not in commits, but they're being debated on Twitter, and it's been debated for years. Like this stuff we've moved past this. That's where it doesn't make sense to pull this argument back up right now, unless you're, I don't know, kind of been co-opted or something. I feel like there's some sort of reason why you'd bring this narrative back up.
Yeah, the thing that I keep thinking about, especially, I didn't mention this in the Under the Microscope episode at all, but this is such a profitable scheme because there's so much dumb money in the space that looks at Bitcoin and they go, oh, this is amazing. It could be something big. Let's be diversified, right? Let's invest in everything from Bcash to Litecoin to Bitcoin. And this would be a great way to have another Bcash, right? A Bcash 2 or whatever, because it's really obvious that this is not a popular proposal, that it wouldn't be good for Bitcoin security, and that most people wouldn't go along with it. But if you can get 3% of the investors in Bitcoin to pop out and create another altcoin, and if you already own, let's say that you own Bcash and you're Roger Ver and you're looking at how things have gone. I don't know, maybe it's profitable, maybe it wasn't as profitable as he expected, but let's assume that it was profitable. If you can fire off another one of those things, the dumb money in the space is just going to go, oh, there's another, it's another Apple. I want to have all the different kinds of apples that I can, and this is another one. And obviously you have to rise above the noise, but if you do a reasonably well-planned kind of campaign, either something like Paul Stork is doing with saying, oh, there's Bitcoin Core, they won't enable my side chains now, right? Maybe we'll have to fork so that I can get my opcode in. Well, that might not even be the motivation, right? Because again, if you can split off a shitcoin, then there's good money in that. So I'm starting to feel like that's just the game.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, my question is, I don't understand why this was put out at this time, because all I really saw was Cobra's Medium post, but did they offer it was the argument that we should do a proof of work change eventually, or was it we do it now and here's the code?
Yeah.
Was there any code? Did he offer anything?
No, just
rousing, right?
So he's saying this is what you need to do. You need to do this work.
Yeah, it's an emergency. If we don't do it now, we might not be able to do it in the future, because we have so many new people coming into the community that don't understand the importance of decentralization. So we got to get this done ASAP.
And I mean, it's so ridiculous. Yeah. His argument is the concentration of hash power under a small amount of individuals in China. One, a mining pool is not a mining farm. A pool being centralized, that is no indication of how many people actually own the hardware pointed at that pool. So I think that things are being way overestimated in the degree of centralization there. Secondly, mining power is migrating out of China right now because their government is slowly trying to incentivize it. And three, as long as it's not in gigantic farms that can be tacked and tracked by the government, even mining power that remains in China is not that big of a systemic risk. Just look at the illegal aluminum smelting business in China. It's almost 2/3 of their exports. They have been trying to crack down on that for literally a decade or more. and they have been unsuccessful. Even within China, if things are distributed and not just in central farms, like the idea that the government can just be omnipresent and seize up all the hash power is ridiculous. Like, things are moving in a much more positive direction. And then to the cherry on top, Blockstream satellite link. Like, when the feed goes live in Asia, and you, like, all you need is a small uplink at the optimal case for literally less than a megabyte using compact blocks to get your block out. And it's directly connected to the fiber network. Like, so many things are happening that are beneficial and pushing things towards decentralization in terms of hash rate. The idea of pushing for this now is just, it's ridiculous. Like, it does nothing but hurt decentralization and help Bitmain maintain a stranglehold on things.
Well, you know, maybe this is all about Bcash. Maybe this is about, you know, getting a proof of work change on Bcash as part of a new feature add to draw more users into it, right? And they have to start logically at Bitcoin to make this argument. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad play. But yeah, I think overall there's something going on here. It's not just an honest dialogue, right? Because even if you had this idea and you were wrong, right? Because you're looking at the situation, you're saying, hey, we've got to do something right now.
Definitely.
You would engage differently than Cobra's engaging. You wouldn't do this stuff like, you know, there's such kind of an undertone of like appeal to racism, right? Like, oh, it's the Chinese, right? It's not really the sort of honest thing that you see when technologists are trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, like just like you're saying, I mean, as far as like the timing goes, just like writing it down real quick, like how much this stuff would screw up. I mean, like, in what's going on as far as the network, and like it's going against what that whole side wants. I mean, like Bitfinex and Coinbase are implementing SegWit. Bitfinex already implemented SegWit. Coinbase is about to roll it out in the next week. You got Dragon Mint miners about to ship. You got Quebec mining regulations and Quebec miners coming on board, GMO miners coming on board. I mean, like, this would kind of, it's like you're trying to steal a part of the market and grab some altcoin and wreck like this whole process that's been going as far as helping decentralization and helping scale the network. It really just shows like what are you trying to achieve? Because this would screw these things up, and these things are helping decentralization, and these things are helping scale the network. So, like, the timing just really screams it. It's like everything Bitcoin scaling. So what to do? Like, we got to come up with an argument, and well, you know, proof of work change for no reason. Like, that's what it feels like, just out of nowhere.
It's literally Munchausen syndrome. Like, it's like, oh, there's no problem. So, problem, guys. Here's a problem. Look at me. Do what I say. I mean, like, there is no rational basis for this argument at all. And real quick, like, even in the case of there being active confirmed censorship, like, even then, I personally would not jump behind supporting a proof of work change, because there are a lot more complex dynamics. What's going on there? Is it just the pools? Okay, well, once the actual hardware owners see what a pool they're mining at is doing is malicious and negative to Bitcoin, hey, it's in their economic interest to move. If it actually is hash rate ownership, hey, like, you have no idea what competition in the market is going to bring over the short term. That can still correct itself even in that worst case. Like, the idea of just pushing for something this fundamentally changing and disruptive for the network on a whim is ridiculous, even in the event of something happening. Like, literally the only situation I would jump to support I can think of is an actual deep chain reorganization. And like, I do not think that's ever going to happen. Like, that would just be ridiculously expensive and would completely undermine all the profit motive that any miner has. Like, I mean, this is just ridiculous at this point.
No, that's a great point, man. Even in that case, I would still say, well, we gotta like be really calm and careful about this. We don't have to do anything drastic, right? Even in a deep chain reorg, we can take our time and figure it out and decide what needs to happen carefully. Because if there was something that happened like that, we'd want to know, like, how expensive was it for the attacker, right? Was that like did they just go broke doing that, and now we don't have to worry about those bad actors anymore? So just because bad things happen doesn't mean that do something.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is like Bitcoin is an incentive system. And if you do not let those incentives play out and just try tweaking them every time you get nervous, one, you're starting to destroy the differences between Bitcoin and conventional financial systems. And two, if it wasn't broken in the first place, which you won't know because you didn't let the incentives play out, I guarantee you're going to fuck it up trying to tweak with things. Like the idea that, like, it's just that entire line of thinking completely undermines what this system is about. A neutral system that does not have its functions dictated by politics. And this kind of nonsense, it just undermines that on every level possible.
Yeah, I don't really see the emergency. Like, I'm fine with having a discussion about it, but I don't appreciate that the side that is pushing for a proof of work change, like, now, I don't appreciate that they're making it, like, they're characterizing it as emergency situation. It's also very convenient that Wright, if you can show the tweet that I sent, right when Cobra's post came out, the mempool started getting filled again with what appears to be spam transactions that we were having a problem with for the past few months. It's just very convenient that, all of this stuff kind of started up again just when, it feels like they're trying to create an emergency where there isn't one to make the change go faster. But I definitely don't think that changes like this should be made under duress unless we can find out that it's absolutely necessary, which I don't think it is at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, like, sorry, real quick, Rick. Like, the universe, like, somebody up there is looking out for the lulls. The Cobra Effect occurs when an attempted solution to a problem makes the problem worse. Like, you literally cannot make this shit up. That is the universe screaming at Cobra, pull your head out of your ass.
Yeah, I like that. When I looked at that, I was like, oh man, maybe that's why he named himself Cobra so long ago. He had the long game in mind. I think somebody in the chat was saying, like, he's been on Reddit talking about how, like, Bcash is like, what it should be is, like, closer to what Bitcoin is meant to be and this original vision, narrative, and everything. So, I mean, it's possible, like you're saying, it's just, like, on that side, trying to take as much of the network as possible. And like you're saying, the political sway of that, just like doing it, wrecks the whole incentive structure. And it wrecks the whole system. That's where it's like, I see people talking about, Ethereum and everything and all the possibilities. And it's like we've always said, it's like the foundation and, like, the corporatization of it. And it's like where whenever I'm looking towards integrations of crypto, it's like, yeah, it's like the whole implementation of it and integration of it is everything and how you do it. And if you screw it up by basically doing the same old thing that fiat does, it's not really a crypto anymore. And it's just it's not really trying to be inside this system. So I think that we're going to go through that later with some other stories too. But yeah, just wanted to comment on that, the way it's like the political part of it kind of wrecks the whole incentive structure.
Yeah, and I want to point out really quick before we move on that the idea that Bitcoin Cash is even like, you can't really make comparisons about which one is scaling better at this point. I mean, you can only make comparisons really about how well Bitcoin is doing, but you can't really say that Bitcoin Cash is doing a better job just because the fees are lower, because Bitcoin Cash doesn't have near the same amount of users. And a few days ago, I saw a bunch of people saying that the average fee on Bitcoin was actually lower than Bitcoin Cash for a while. Like, that's amazing that you can have like a chain that is actually being used by real people 24/7 have lower fees than the chain that has no one using it. Like, you clearly that shows that something wrong, like the idea of how to lower fees, something went wrong with Bitcoin Cash because they're not actually achieving that goal. They should have, if under their perspective, they should always have lower fees than Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, you know, I guess last little quick commentary before we move on if nobody else has something to say, but, you know, with the way that fees went out of control over the last couple months, I mean, yes, I do think a big part of that was just people FOMOing and going to withdraw coins they purchased. But, you know, something Trace Mayer points out that I think it's really a big factor in that as well, is it really is in miners' best interest to push fees as high as they can just to see the elasticity of demand, just to see like how high fees can actually be before use starts dropping off. And I mean,
Yeah,
like
that's a good point.
The fact that we hit pretty much fee parity with the block subsidy before things started like dropping off, like I very much think that is a dead-on analysis. I think that miners were essentially testing to see whether they could replace the subsidy with fees and whether people would continue using Bitcoin if they did so. And I mean, like, yeah, like things are very multifaceted in this space.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm just thinking about that. It's interesting.
And I guess one last funny thing from Janine before next story. Craig Wright can't even spell Nakamoto.
Yeah, so just to explain a bit, this was a job posting that he made via LinkedIn. Like, first of all, fuck, why is Satoshi Nakamoto, aka Satoshi Nakamoto, using LinkedIn? Like, sorry, never going on there. But he, in the job posting, he apparently misspelled Nakamoto to Nakamoto.
Oh man, I had a meetup last night, and the guy said Satoshi Nakamoto is Craig Wright, right? I was like, oh gosh, oh no, oh man, it works. There's people out there.
Before I start screaming, I'm gonna explain on to the next one. Further update with Coinbase SegWit support. So effectively, they're going to be, I guess, staggering the rollout for users over the next week or so, and they're using pay-to-script hash SegWit. Coinbase, I'm going to continue shitting on you until you support Bec32 and raw SegWit keys. And an explicit warning, obviously, that if people screw up and send their Bcash to a Bitcoin address, well, you've just really fucked up bad there. And yeah, pretty much they're just spewing more PR nonsense. We're going to get better at our UTXO management, and we're going to be working on Lightning Network. And, you know, it's same jazz. Pretty much GDAX had a similar blog post. They're going to be taking the same approach to rolling things out. And one thing I want to say real quick about Lightning Network and Coinbase is I still see this FUD going around that Coinbase isn't going to touch Lightning Network because of legal requirements. And I just want to reiterate again, that's ridiculous. Like, they can just choose to not route anything that they are not an endpoint for. If they are sending coins to somebody over Lightning Network, it's tied to an account. They know who it is. If somebody is depositing Bitcoins over Lightning Network, it's tied to accounts. They know who it is. And even in the case of merchants, they know which merchant is accepting that payment. And this is already something they do without KYCing customers. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to be any issues in the long term with Coinbase rolling out Lightning support. I think that's pretty much just FUD.
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me in that blog post, though, is where it says we have a full-time dedicated developer, like not like a bunch of developers. We have a dedicated full-time software engineer. That's, I mean,
but they're hiring.
Yeah, they're definitely hiring. And maybe they didn't destroy confidence, you know, in their business too badly that no one would want to work for them. But that makes me a bit worried that they have, especially because it's taken them so long just to add something like SegWit. I feel like they should have more than one person working on something like that, especially when, you know, we don't have like we still have all these warnings whenever you're using Lightning stuff on mainnet that you have the potential to lose your money. Like there's still like a lot of security risks with, you know, using it early on. And so I really hope they're not going to launch something ahead of everyone else based on the work of one person.
Yeah, like I don't know. I think there's a little bit of conflict of interest there. If Brian Armstrong's really a Bcash or, you know, one of those guys that's trying to go that direction, that's the only place where it's like, yeah, you know, they're scaling and like they're implementing SegWit, but like along with that, it's like, you know, it's kind of like they're just playing the game, right? It's like Bitfinex just rolled out SegWit, so you got to be competitive, and you've got like some pretty bad news there about giving up your customers' KYC information. So why not go ahead and just do the same thing, like put out the good news with the bad news, and then maybe they'll cancel each other out, and go ahead and mention that you got a Lightning developer on board. So I don't know. Bitcoin's all about proof of work, and the work side of Coinbase hasn't really showed up to really scale Bitcoin the proper way. So I'm still kind of questionable about what they're going to do.
If they don't get their shit together and somehow fuck up implementing Lightning Network down the line, I would expect that to probably be the fucking nail in the coffin for that business. I mean, that would just be the final straw.
I mean, the final straw for me was when they hired a former federal prosecutor, but, you know, or they started, you know, using browser fingerprinting techniques, but, you know.
Yeah, the work suggests something otherwise.
Sadly, other people have different final straws. But other Coinbase related news. Guys, if you have dealt with more than pocket change, I believe in this instance the figure was dealt with more than 20K of total volume over any of the years of 2013 through 2015. They are actually sending your information to the IRS soon. Letters went out to all customers whose information is being sent, I think 2 days ago. And yeah, for anybody who is affected by this, as much as I hate to say this, go speak to an accountant or a lawyer, depending on your case, and don't fuck around with this, because they are getting your entire trade history for those periods, all of your personal information. There is really no running or hiding from this. So I would recommend handling this in a way that does not give the government an opportunity to fuck you up the ass.
Yeah, not only are they getting your, you know, the personal documents that you intentionally volunteered, but they're also obviously getting the browser fingerprint data, which includes what type of operating system you use, what kind of browser you use, your user agent string, which basically will allow them to track you in other places of the web if they suspect that maybe there's other activity that you haven't declared outside of Coinbase. So I would be very careful with that.
Yeah, definitely. That story that popped along with it is just like, yeah, greater showing you like what, I don't know, maybe they're making more money on this whole like FinCEN and government contracts and BCH, and, you know, they sell Bitcoin on the side. They're really just working this whole other angle, trying to figure out how they can, you know, lock everybody down and try and get everything under control. But in the meantime, they are selling Bitcoin to some customers, and maybe they're at least, you know, going to be able to protect themselves somewhat in this market. So, I mean, there's a little bit of good in there, but it's a lot of bad too. And it's a lot of misdirection, and it's a lot of, you know, just sort of propaganda. So it'd be nice to see whenever everybody's sort of working together on the same page.
The Coinbase is just the worst. So if you haven't already done business with these guys, you're lucky enough to not be in the batch of data that's being handed over. Use something like local Bitcoins. It doesn't really work for trying to day trade or anything like that. But if you have to pay a premium of 5% for your Bitcoin over Coinbase, and you're able to get it without sharing your information at all, like if you do cash by mail, that's a good way to go. Or if you're gonna share information, if you're gonna do some wire transfer or something, and you're gonna actually use your real name, at least you're only using your real name with one dude. You're not putting it into a database that everybody knows exists, and it's just a matter of time before it gets handed off to the government. Or and this won't be the last time this data is handed off, right? Like if you're one of the victims, this data has been handed off to the IRS. I guarantee you it's a ticking clock until the IRS leaks all of the data or Coinbase leaks all of the data to everybody. So it's not a good situation to be in. So if you're not in it already, avoid it. And then the other thing I wanted to let Coinbase know how much I appreciate them is in that last story. They're now supporting SegWit. And there's this little comment in there about, a reminder, don't send BCH to BTC addresses because now it's completely irrevocable. That money is just vaporized. Thanks a lot, guys, because you've nailed it with the user experience. I mean, you changed the color of the logo and you shifted it 15 degrees. I don't know how anybody could make that mistake. I mean, you've made it so clear and distinct. You didn't use Bcash. You kept with Bitcoin Cash. You didn't make the logo significantly different. It's green instead of orange. That's something. But it's still really not what it needs to be to keep people from making that mistake. So great work. I can't wait till the competition comes along and cleans you out. But until then, I guess we'll keep talking about you.
Yeah, and real quick, Janine, as far as local Bitcoins goes, I just want to say, guys, that when you see a phone number or an email address somewhere, there's nothing stopping you from just calling that phone number or sending an email. Just think about it for a second.
Well, JW, your prediction that the IRS is going to lose your identity information is probably more true than many people would guess, because remember, Equifax, who just lost the identifying information of half the country, as well as people from the UK and Canada, I think.
Yeah, it's still
also South America. Yeah, there's also, I think, a country in South America that somehow had a portal that also got affected. But now that Equifax has a contract with the IRS to run the identity verification system, that very well may happen, because it's going to come full circle. Your Coinbase data is going to end up being held by Equifax, who literally just lost that same information last year.
Wait a minute. How can we trust any of this data?
That's where it becomes like a nightmare rabbit hole.
Don't worry, man. I'm sure that you're not going to end up in jail because somebody, doctored some digital data. That doesn't happen in this day and age. Ross Ulbricht definitely did everything he said, even though all the agents had access to all of his passwords, and some of them are in jail right now. Don't worry about that at all. It's cool, dude.
I mean, even just take that stuff out of the equation. Just the bit twiddling that goes on. Just the fact that an old file can be reappended in a data restore. Just so many different things is just, I worked in big data, and I that stuff can get really out of whack sometimes. And sometimes it's a while before people notice too.
Oh yeah. That Equifax thing was going on for a while before those guys noticed. And then, they made sure to make the sell at the top and then tell everybody else.
Yep, just shady crap all around. And
I gotta just mention, it's not like Coinbase would ever do any insider trading if there was a breach too, because those guys have trouble for that. I mean, how many freaking stories can there be about one company in a 6-month period? It's unbelievable.
Well, it definitely does show they're making a lot of money from stuff other than just selling Bitcoin.
JW, the day that there is not a reason to shit talk Coinbase is either the day Coinbase is dead or Bitcoin is dead.
I think you're right, because I don't know how many weeks we've gone without having something significant to say about these guys. I mean, I'd be curious to go back over like the last 6 months of shows and figure out what percentage they did something that was just absolutely shockingly stupid.
You know what would restore my faith in Coinbase? If they hired a new CFO who had candlesticks.
Yeah, the discussion of a new CEO was there for a little while, but our CFO, CEO need to get some new thoughts in there because, yeah, it's starting to seem like they're not really doing anything helpful for Bitcoin anymore.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, when people fuck around in this ecosystem and do shady shit, you know, things eventually catch up with them, even if it takes a while.
Apparently, James Bond wants us to know that that we started the live stream at the wrong time.
James, deal with it. Okay, you obviously have computer access on the toilet, so everything will be okay. But yeah, Bitfunder, for those who don't know, is an old exchange in the space that went belly up. The owner, John Montrol, is pretty much in jail and getting charged with fraud. This is the SEC filing, kind of just brushing over things. Pretty much the exchange was hacked, insolvent, and then he raised money selling shares in the company, hid the hack, and defrauded everybody. And what's really going to fuck him in the end here is when he was brought into court, he lied. He said that the hack did not lose any money. It was corrected immediately and got busted with a lot of other contemporaneous evidence showing him freaking out about it, engaging in communications, acknowledging it. And pretty much he had 6,000 or a little more Bitcoin in the exchange. And after the hack was left with 40 and tried to cover it with his own money. Raising money from people by issuing illegal shares in the exchange. And this guy is pretty much fucked. Like he's like just one charge as a maximum penalty of 20 years for obstruction. Not to mention the fraud charges, not to mention the perjury charges. As much as I hate to see the government stamp its boot on somebody, this guy was a fucking criminal. I mean, and not just in the legal sense, like he defrauded people, he stole from people, and you know, shit happens, even if it takes a while.
Yeah, those guys will definitely eventually track you down if you have that kind of money, like, and you know, you lied about it, and you know, the price rise recently. I mean, like 6,000, you know, Bitcoin. 2013, or 2014, 2015, not the same as now. And yeah, that, I don't know. That's just like you're lying to the guys that you definitely don't want to lie to, because if they find out about that, they're going to throw the book at you because, I mean, yeah, like who's to say, like, you know, how many coins are really out there now and like whether or not they'll be able to get them back. And so might be one of these guys that's going to be made an example of, but, you know, I don't know. It's like I'm like just being in this whole like crypto thing now and like sort of the finance sort of sector of things. It's like if you don't play that game right, as far as what the government wants you to do and pay, that's where you're in trouble. So, yeah, it's gonna get himself in trouble there, lying about that money.
Yeah, I'll throw out my my regular ANCAP clarification. ANCAPs do like it when bad guys go to jail. We just think it doesn't happen often enough. So there you go.
Yep. So you know,
wait, what? I know some anarcho-capitalists who don't even agree with prisons.
I don't necessarily agree with prisons, but the general concept of bad guys being punished is definitely something we agree with. It's universal, an ANCAP thing, right? But a lot of people think that like ANCAP just means like chaos, like just everybody shooting each other in the face in the streets. We believe in law. We believe in a legal system. We believe in a defense system, a personal defense system. Insurance, all that stuff is totally legitimate. And maybe we think that the focus should be more on restitution than jail time, but the general concept of you screw somebody over, you pay for it, that's not something that any ANCAP is against. And it sounds silly to call that out, but a lot of people are coming into the Bitcoin space and hearing about the cypherpunk movement for the first time, and they don't get that. So,
well, I mean, like jail is the stupid part. Like, you've either committed an offense that you can compensate somebody for, or you've done something so grievous that you should not be allowed to walk around in society. And at that point, it's likely something that warrants a death penalty.
Yeah, I generally agree with that framework. Like, you either make it up to somebody or you can't, and then you just, then you're really screwed.
Yeah, I also agree with that on a smaller scale when it comes to personal disputes, not just criminal stuff. But I would definitely say that probably the first argument I would make, as usual, is that the best policy to even avoid disputes arising in the first place is to try to not use exchanges, or use them as much, or try to use exchanges as little as possible, so that they don't have that much control over your money, that they can take it from you without you even really noticing.
Unless you like day trading like a degenerate.
Right. Didn't Robinhood just go live?
What are you talking about? Hashtag never trade.
No, who said that? Trading's fine. It's just,
well,
if you lose,
I'm the one
you're going to lose. But
I'm the one who's actually never traded.
Don't worry. If you're trading, you're going to be broke anyway, so it's not a problem.
It's really simple. Green numbers are good and red numbers are bad. Go get the green numbers, guys. Okay. Don't just go run off and start trading with no idea what you're doing. All right. I guess slide along to the next one, guys. Boom. Bank of America is shaking in their boots.
Yeah, this is when we can kind of guess, but it's good to see.
Mm-hmm. Cryptocurrency is something they're very scared of.
Well, I just, as AK just pointed out simultaneously with me, I want to point out once again, we have some snake imagery where Bank of America as an acronym as BOA. BOA constrictor.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But, and the honey badger eats snakes. It's perfect.
Oh, my God.
Great.
The universe, I love you. But I'm going to kind of just skip past the article real quick, and because there's only really 3 mentions of cryptocurrencies in their actual filing with the SEC. And pretty much what they're worried about chiefly is things like, I'll just read it. Emerging technologies such as cryptocurrencies could limit our ability to track the movement of funds. Our ability to comply with these laws, being AML, KYC, etc., is dependent on our ability to improve detection and reporting capabilities and reduce variation in control processes and oversight accountability. And obviously, crypto kind of throws a wrench in that, because you get into crypto and then nobody can stop you. You can do whatever the hell you want. And then further down here, pretty much a broader thing they're concerned with is increasing competition in the financial services industry, and not necessarily just from cryptocurrencies exclusively. They talk about the differences in kind of regulatory obligations across different jurisdictions, and pretty much are making the argument that different requirements for liquidity and capital across different regions potentially put them at a disadvantage, and as well as other companies in other regions having closer relationships and understanding with those regions' regulatory bodies. And so they're kind of, even crypto aside, just the way that the US handles regulations, like they're kind of putting our financial institutions at a big disadvantage in a lot of international areas. And then they further go on to kind of bring cryptocurrencies into the picture. And pretty much their main worry here is pressure to lower their credit standards, lower prices for things, and kind of put pressure on them to implement new technologies that could actually compete with this. And yeah, pretty much what the one thing that stands out to me is our inability to adapt our products and services to evolving industry standards and consumer preferences could harm our business.
Well, I like that part where it says we operate in a highly competitive environment and will continue to experience intense competition from local and global financial institutions. Are you serious? Like the whole reason Bitcoin the whole reason Bitcoin exists is because they haven't had significant competition for like hundreds of years. Like the financial players themselves haven't had competition really for 100 years or less. The big players like the oh god, ambulance.
Ah! Wow.
I'm sorry. I didn't know it was there. It snuck up on me. Yeah, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's the reason that it's so controversial is because the financial industry hasn't had a lot of competition. That's what makes it so scary to a lot of these banks. So the idea that they're saying we operate in a highly competitive environment, it's like, no, you don't. Like the amount of competition in the financial industry is like there's probably more competition between governments than there is between people in the financial industry.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's where it's like it just sort of sounds like they're kind of crying about the competition thing. It's like we now have to compete and make money more, solid, and we have to actually do accounting. It's a big problem, big overhead expenses problem.
And like another quote that stood out to me, additionally, the competitive landscape may be impacted by the growth of non-depository institutions that offer products that were traditionally banking products, as well as new innovative products. In addition, the widespread adoption of new technologies, including internet services, cryptocurrencies, and payment systems, could require substantial expenditures to modify or adapt our existing products and services as we grow and develop our internet banking and mobile banking channel strategies. So it's like they're literally shitting their pants. Like they're finally realizing that almost everything they offer, except really from where I'm standing, like just handling security for people, really. Like you can even manage loans without these kinds of institutions. Like their lunch is going to get eaten. And they've been doing nothing but sitting on their hands, trying to patent things that have had prior art for literally decades and just called it all a Ponzi scheme.
Totally. I love how they're saying that they're going to need to spend more money as a result of cryptocurrencies right there. And I just want to give them a shout out. Don't worry about that, guys. I promise that your costs are going to be slashed drastically. Like the number of customers that you're going to have to service as a result of Bitcoin is going to go down so much that all that trouble you're having with regulatory compliance and all those sort of things, it's going to be a lot less in the future. So don't sweat that part of it.
That's what I thought it was so funny because it's like they're going to be spending money, but it's not going to be to improve the system, right? It's just going to be on like how we can trick our customers further into believing that this thing isn't worth their money or time.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And like the most hilarious part is, like, in my opinion, if you really break down most of what these institutions do, like really the only large service left to offer is outsourcing the security or the management of your private keys. And hey, guess what? Things like multi-sig offer the possibility to do that in a non-custodial way legally, which means, hey, you're going to have a shitload of competition that's not going to have to deal with a lot of the regulatory overhead that you do. So even in the thing that they still have as a viable business model, like in a fully crypto world, they're going to have competition up the ass because there's a lack of all of these regulatory barriers that come with being a custodial agent. that are not going to apply to the non or quasi custodial types of services you can build with Bitcoin.
Right. That's where it's just like so dumb. It feels like, you know, they're just going to spend their money to really kind of trick their customers into being like, this is a new thing and it's totally decentralized and it's this great thing. But, you know, reality is it's like, yeah, same system, sort of like new spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's really like, yeah, I mean, like what else is really out there as a viable business model except maybe insurances or like clearing other financial assets? I mean, like non-currency things, stocks, bonds, like etc. And like that's like you're gonna see a huge shrinking in the piece of the pie that they have any ability to compete for, and
Right.
it's Darwin at its finest.
Yeah, I mean, like, if anything, I think like credit unions are probably going to serve a purpose as just as far as like, you know, forming relationships of local like economies on the ground there in order to serve them because, yeah, it really just sort of X's them out of the picture. So, yeah, this is something like where we kind of, you know, knew Bitcoin was a threat to the banks and everything. And we, you know, assumed that's why they were spreading the FUD that they were. And yeah, it's good to see, like, I guess, like a public record, you know, released where we can see that they obviously do understand it's a threat and they're going to have to start wasting their dollars to try and, I guess, trick people into thinking that it's not there.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember, because I mean, there's almost no point in having an account with one of the big banks because you can get pretty much all of the same benefits going through a credit union. But what I found so hilarious is that the first time I ever used PayPal, I was sending money with someone, I think in Germany, and it was so weird. Like you would think that something like PayPal, which was made to make, you know, international payments, that would go fine. But no, I had to spend 3 days with customer service, like setting up my account to like even accept payments from other countries and different currencies. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I should not have to do this. This really sucks.
Right. That's where the tools are not new. It's just a different spin on the same system.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of different spin on the same shit, before we get into this, I have to say, Charlie Lee, you were right on the fucking head at the start of this year. A year of the national cryptocurrencies. And Jesus Christ, is the Petro turning out to be a gigantic shit show.
Right.
So I'm gonna be kind of scatterbrained going through some of this article because Janine went and dug up a bunch of different sources for the kind of the same information. But the one thing I want to point out to start is that the National Assembly in Venezuela is completely opposed to this. So a large chunk of their government is saying this is illegal, this is unconstitutional, and like they're just completely against the idea of the Petro. And like given the fact that pretty much the entire basis for its price peg is that the government will accept it for taxes, duties, fees, public services, and so on. I think everybody should step back for a second and realize that that guarantee can disappear as quick as snapping your finger. The government just goes, we're not honoring these anymore. We're not redeeming them. And given the fact that Maduro is effectively a socialist dictator at this point, and the country is peeling apart at the seams, and most of the government is against this idea, I think everybody should step back for a second and think about how strong that guarantee of price is when all it takes is snap and the mechanism supporting that price peg disappears.
Yeah, so just to quickly point out the reason why this is a problem. So if you're not familiar with Venezuelan politics right now, you have Maduro. Is that how you pronounce? Yeah, Maduro. How you pronounce his name? I've never actually heard it spoken out loud. I think it's Maduro.
Mm-hmm.
So the president is Maduro, but then the parliament is controlled by the opposition party at the moment, which means that if the opposition party is against the Petro, that means that this basically might not happen at all, because unless he tries to go around parliament, there's not a high chance of it getting accepted if basically a majority of the parliament is against it.
Mm-hmm. And Auntie is in the chat saying I'm wrong that they're going to redeem it in bolivars. Yeah, they are, Auntie, but that's part of the point, is the amount of bolivars they're redeeming it for is tied to the price of oil. So it's not like they're just going to throw a set amount of bolivars at people to redeem this. It is against the price of oil. So if the currency continues to devaluate, they're going to have to redeem it for more and more bolivars. Like it is not sustainable in the long term. And two, like I said, it is literally just a political promise to redeem that, which can be revoked at any time. And given the fact that half of the government is completely against this idea, I think the guarantee of that redemption is flimsy, being very generous about it.
Yeah, and keep in mind that, the government said, at least so far, they said that they're not accepting bolivars in order to purchase these Petro tokens or Petro coins, or it would be a token. So they're going to have to get they're going to have to get the bolivars from somewhere in order to make this promise that you can redeem them for bolivars, or the amount of bolivars that equates to however many barrels of petrol. But yeah, that's not really a good situation to be in when you don't really have a plan for where your incoming stream of the redeemable asset is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And one more response real quick to Auntie. Printing physical bills costs money. Like you can't just print cash out of thin air. That comes at a very high cost. And one of the things that was actually in my mind the first holy shit, how bad is it down there, is they literally could not afford to print more cash. Like there are private companies out there that actually handle for different governments the printing of physical currency, and they literally could not afford to make payments to print more physical currency. Like that is how ridiculous the situation is down there.
Yeah, it's pretty bad down there with that hyperinflation, and like you're saying, it really is like up to the political whim. Like, I mean, Venezuela, I mean, they're going through this because, like, I mean, they did have that leader Hugo Chavez, who was really big about, moving away from the West and their trade and everything, and going into their own independent, with the oil and everything. And this guy's right after Hugo Chavez, which, like, I don't think he really has. I mean, judging from the country, it doesn't seem like they have that much strong support, and he's, probably wielding it, pretty with a iron fist on economics, or just, general thuggery out there as far as like the way the cops are run. And yeah, it's just like we were saying before, it's like a new play on the same system, and it's not really sustainable at all, because like you're saying, it's going to cost money to print dollars or paper, whatever, the bolivar, and doesn't really cost anything to print this utility token, and somehow you have to back it up. And that's where I don't know, I guess the parliament is probably closest when it comes to trying to figure out what the real currency will be. And because I mean, like, at least a parliament kind of has to represent multiple areas of the country, I imagine. I'm not really that versed in their government, but I'd imagine that it has to do with multiple representatives having to at least get along, where this guy Nicholas is probably it's like if he falls out of his place as far as the head of this thing, then here's a new thing, and it's just not sustainable at all. They gotta do this thing the right way if they want to actually create an economy.
One of the things that that I noticed is that the amount of bolivars to oil to Petro, it's not set by the market. So there's an official exchange rate. And what that means is that the government just determines what that rate is. So there's really no fixed rate between how many bolivars will be given, and if you want to have them redeemed for a Petro. Even all the other things aside, they've just flat out said that it's going to be an official exchange rate. And if you've ever been in one of those third world countries, you know that the official exchange rate is so disconnected from reality that it's not an exchange rate. It's just whatever we feel like giving you today. And I also wanted to say, I kind of thought, I 3 weeks ago, I said, there's not going to be any government issued cryptocurrencies because it doesn't make sense. And I was pretty confident that Petro wasn't going to happen. And so now I would say I'll adjust that a little bit because I thought, well, they really did issue it. I think I said last week, I'm really surprised, but I think the distinction is that we're not going to see any countries issue cryptocurrencies with a limited supply unless the current money is totally hyperinflated. And the reason for that is you don't want to kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs. Now, if the goose is dead, right? If your currency is totally hyperinflated and the central bank just can't steal any more money from the people in that way, then yeah. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. It's also just a complete, breakdown of the thugs. They're not working together very smoothly. So that's another way that you might see a government issue a cryptocurrency, is if it's one segment of the government that's maybe not getting their hands on the theft that's happening in the central bank, then maybe there's a cryptocurrency issued. But as long as things are kind of functional, as long as there's one mafia with the central bank and things are working pretty smoothly inside that mafia, I'm still confident we're not going to see the issuance of a cryptocurrency again, at least not one that's like decentralized in any way or has a fixed supply.
Well, yeah, the word going around right now, I don't know who came up with it first, but I think it was Chris Berniski. I don't know. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I guess they're calling it crypto fiat. And I definitely wouldn't consider a token on the NEM blockchain to be a currency. So at best, these are government crypto tokens or asset tokens or something.
Right. Like that term was just coined on Twitter. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but yeah, we've seen it, like the crypto ruble. I mean, it's like these things have been discussed, and like what Charlie Lee said at the beginning of the year, this was the new fad. So yeah, like the term was just sort of coined, but it definitely it makes sense. Crypto fiat. That's the way these things look.
Mm-hmm. I mean, real quick before we go through that tweet storm, I wouldn't even say this is a token. Like, this is just a pre-sale of oil. Like, they're literally set aside oil that's not even been pulled up out of the ground, not even refined. That actually has a higher cost of refining than most crude oil, and they're just selling it. Like, this is a scam. Like, this is an outright scam. And oops, I lost. There we go. But yeah, Chris's breakdown here is pretty dead on point. Like, this is just the same old thing in a new wrapping. I mean,
yeah, that fiat is fiat, no matter the form. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, there was several tweets in this where I liked what he's saying. Yeah, I think that like we were saying, this has been discussed, like the crypto ruble in the news. Like, we've got even more stories about these things coming out, and I just like of it all. Like, I think Wyoming really kind of nailed it with their like legislation, sort of differentiating between an ICO, a crypto, and a utility token, just to sort of set up a base there to where you could maybe start building these tokens, like we're saying, that are limited and working with the local economies there in the proper way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, overall, I think it's still incredibly positive, though. I mean, yes, this is a scam, but a government just issued a fake cryptocurrency. That's freaking amazing. I would have never thought that was going to happen a year ago. It's certainly not a government that has a huge economy. And then the other thing I thought was just incredible from all of this is that clowns like Bloomberg are making distinctions between like fake cryptocurrencies and real cryptocurrencies now. So, that's a lot of progress, man. When they were selling Ripple not that long ago, and now they're having to go, oh, just because it's digital and it uses the term cryptocurrency, maybe there's maybe it's a little more complicated than that. So I'm psyched either way.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, one last thing that just screams scam to me is this section used to reference an ERC20 token, but now an blockchain. And it's pretty much discussing they're going to issue pre-sale tokens, which can be redeemed for the actual tokens after a period of time. And here we go. Here are the tokens on the NEM blockchain. None of them have moved. You can see here there is the full Petro supply, the initial wave of the pre-sale, a pre-sale transfer token. None of these tokens have moved. And Maduro is claiming they have already raised $730 million.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty dubious when we saw they couldn't even sell the tokens, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes no comprehensible sense. There are literally special purpose tokens for the pre-sale with the logic that you turn them in later to get your actual Petro, and none of them have moved despite claiming to have sold almost $1 billion worth. I mean, that makes no sense on any level. How do you take that token and redeem it for the actual Petro if you haven't taken delivery of it?
Well, Shinobi, maybe the government has just told these, bunch of investors who are somehow interested in this Petro token, maybe they've told them that they're going to hold them for them, kind of like a bank does.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. It's like there's some pre-orders for the pre-sale. There's intent behind it, so that's where he's getting these figures, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And that's just another part of this that makes no sense. Like they're trying to get their geopolitical allies to purchase this, which is effectively just printing value out of thin air, taking a loan. And why would other countries do this? Like over the past few years, Russia has actually been trying to collect its outstanding debt from Venezuela. So why would these other countries, while Venezuela is falling apart, while their currency is hyperinflating, while their government has pretty much turned into a socialist dictatorship, sink more money into the country? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I mean, looking at all of this combined, it just screams bullshit trying to get the suckers at the last wave to part with their Bitcoin or their Ethereum or actual like cryptocurrencies with solid value and just run away with money. I mean, like it this makes no sense on every layer you can look at it except as a scam.
Right. That's where it's like the only way that it does make sense is like if that's it's just like when they discuss bubbles, like its intent is like to blow up as much money as possible. It's like, yeah, that's the only thing where I see like a use is like, okay, there's a little bit of value left in there. How are you gonna get it? Just tokenize this, grab that last little bit, and then it blows up. So I don't know. It's definitely something where it's not really useful as far as like what these technologies are trying to achieve, and it's definitely something where it's going to lead towards a more Orwellian situation over there if it does sort of go in this direction. I mean, it's like we're saying, it's like they're already sort of lying about it. It's like, well, we got 785 million, but none of it has actually been sold yet. So same problems, different narrative.
And if you thought this wasn't bad enough, more governments jumping on board.
The Turk coin now.
Yeah. So Ahmet Kenan Tenrakulu, I probably just butchered that in a million different ways. He's the deputy chair of the Nationalist Movement Party. Is discussing creating a Turkish cryptocurrency. And this is really kind of funny because in Turkey, it's not illegal to own or buy or sell cryptocurrencies and so forth, but it has been pretty much declared against Islam because it's entirely speculative in nature, akin to gambling, and not supported by a government. But you pretty much have Turkey discussing asset-backed crypto tokens, looking to leverage large company stocks and things along that manner. And also Iran, which their central bank has been kind of going over how to deploy a potential cryptocurrency or blockchain platform. And like this is like facepalm times 10,000.
Yeah, if you notice, like all of the countries that are trying to do this, they're pretty much the worst countries in the world in terms of like economic, social freedom.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like, this sort of echoes the sentiment I just heard about Putin saying, like, we've got to rush to this new digital currency payment system before it's too late. And it's like, yeah, that whole like rush to, like let's see, the Turk coin at a specific line. It said would tokenize asset-based securities for issuance. So, like, that sort of sounds like an ICO, and how they're going to exactly describe these tokens and everything. Yeah, it's like it's definitely all sort of coming from this Venezuela, Russia, Turkey, Iran, like I guess you could say, and sort of same sort of cultural background as far as like sort of living in a, I don't know, a bad state or a troubled state.
And I mean, like one thing, like I kind of wanted to point out here in the report for the Turkish government, one of the concerns is money laundering and fraud, and they want to create a government-controlled bourse, which is it's pretty much another word for an exchange, as a way to deal with these things. So they not only are starting to look into creating their own cryptocurrency, they're considering running a government-owned and operated Bitcoin exchange, which, when you really boil down to the core of a lot of this, I think is just these countries attempting to get their hands on Bitcoin. Like, they have failed to accumulate. They have failed to take advantage of the upside exposure that Bitcoin presents on a global scale. And now they're just scrambling to figure out how to get their hands on it.
Well, it's also like, I imagine, got to do with that regulatory capture part as well. It's just like, you know, we want to have all the KYC information. We want to decide which exchanges you go to, all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, they either want to hold the Bitcoin directly or have tags on every Bitcoin out there as far as who has it, who's in control of it. Because, yeah, I mean, like, I think we've kind of touched on this topic broadly with a lot of different stories, is like the potential that Bitcoin has to really uplift a lot of developing or kind of sanctioned countries in the world compared to developed countries is enormous in the long term. And I think that a lot of these countries are finally pulling their head out of their ass and realizing that, and they really have nothing left to do except shady things to try to catch up.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a positive spin on this too. I mean, like Iran, Russia, and Turkey, these are countries that are not exactly where you would want to live if you're in the United States. But on the other hand, they're all countries that benefit the least from the US dollar domination. So it's not just corruption necessarily that's driving them to look at these cryptocurrencies. It could be just a realization that they're not able to do business with the United States the way they want to, right? These guys are all suffering under embargoes, which is really an act of war. We're doing that to basically every nation, including China. It's just constant war all the time, at least in an economic way. We're always starving somebody if we're not bombing somebody. So these guys are taking the brunt of that right now. And I think this might be a step towards them eventually realizing that Bitcoin's the best way to kind of destroy US dominance in their region and around the world. So I think these are some pretty big rumblings. I mean, we were talking, I don't know, late last year that we think 2018 is going to be the year that nation states get involved with Bitcoin, or at least with cryptocurrencies. I think we were kind of hoping Bitcoin, but we'll see how it works out. But But the reality is, I mean, we all know this, that Bitcoin's the nuclear weapon of the new millennium, right? If you want to have some kind of sovereignty or peace and you don't want to be dominated by an empire, then you have to find a way to not participate and be dependent on that empire. And we've seen huge moves on the US dollar. I mean, the value of the dollar has been dropping really rapidly over the last quarter. For the first time, you can buy oil without using US dollars from China. That's huge. That's like the end of the empire, right? It's like people invading at the walls and no soldiers show up to do anything about it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I hope that this is just getting them putting their toe in the water and kind of seeing how the U.S. responds. And they don't want to give up their scam of being able to print money and screw over their population. But if they're at a disadvantage to the U.S., who's doing that more effectively, maybe they're going to slowly diversify out of that scam, and slowly it'll just unravel. So that's what I'm hoping.
A million things just clicked in my head. JW, Satoshi is Japanese. They have Satoshi's coins. They're going to become the superpower of the 21st century. It's what all the anime with the dystopian, weird sci-fi futures where Japan is like the world leader. It's all the plan. They've been indoctrinating their citizens the whole time.
So the Star Trek Federation starts with Japan, huh?
Figured out horizontal scale. They beat us to figuring out how to like a society horizontally, right?
Shinobi Satoshi is definitely an Australian.
Are you okay? I have to
He's New Zealand. He's New Zealand, not Australia.
I'm going to offend any
Yeah.
watching if I don't bite my tongue, so I'm just going to go no. No.
Shinobi was going to say something about Australians being the rednecks of the world, but I'm glad he didn't, because that's not appropriate.
No.
I didn't say it.
Well, in that case, New Zealand is like the closeted rednecks because their surveillance state is actually pretty bad compared to I mean, they're not within the 5 eyes, but they're within the 14 eyes because apparently that's a thing.
Tom, if you're watching, he didn't mean it.
The last comment on the whole geopolitical thing, even though these guys might do that, right? Like, let's just say Japan did have all Satoshi's coins. Governments can't hold on to cryptocurrencies. It's the poison pill. Anybody that has access to those private keys is going to be incentivized to just bail.
No, I think with more complex scripting, that aspect of things can be handled. But I think it's more the economic side of things that's going to prevent that. Is unless you're actually generating value, you're just going to slowly be hemorrhaging your money until you don't have any more. And I mean, until you actually learn to generate real value for people, that's just what's going to happen.
Okay, so correction on something I just said. Apparently, New Zealand is within the 5 eyes because it's Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, United Kingdom, and United States. So great. New Zealand, you are in the top 5 worst surveillance countries in the world. Good job.
That's where Pine Gap is, right? That's where one of the big listing posts is.
Yeah, New Zealand participates in a lot of surveillance activity.
What's the average IQ of a New Zealander? How does that compare to the United States?
I
don't know. Where's the murky waters here?
It could be higher. I just love
why does it
ask
matter?
that question. It's just like a grenade going off in the room. I have no idea if it's higher or lower.
I don't know. Just I hate the whole IQ arguments being brought up. Ugh.
Conversation over. Shinobi's fascist is coming out. This is done.
I'm trying to find where they are in the democracy index, but I think it's locked. Damn it.
I'll give them credit. At least they didn't let the United States just kidnap Kim.com and his whole DRM thing, digital rights management. And, I mean, I don't know. It's like everybody. They're playing the game to where they have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's
as Chris likes to say, New Zealand is basically the location for Lord of the Rings, which is basically 3-hour-long New Zealand tourism commercial.
That's about right. I've thought a couple of times maybe go to that little village.
Who the hell doesn't want to go visit Brain fart.
What's it called? Hobbiton or something like that?
Hobbiton.
Shire.
The Shire, yeah.
That's the best part. I mean, I was all stoned just looking at the landscape like, this is fantastic. I want to go there.
Well, you don't even necessarily have to go there because now people are actually building those types of houses in other countries. I would love to live in a house like that because you save on fuel costs. You don't have to heat up everything because you're underground.
Janine, get out of my head.
Oh yeah, I've seen a couple of those designs coming out now.
It's the most picturesque looking bunker you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm. All right, so are we ready? Are we ready to punch one of our favorite punching bags, guys? Are we ready?
Oh yeah.
Bam! BitPay is going to stop processing adult entertainment purchases.
I wonder if this had something to do with John.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. If Roger Ver isn't screaming censorship about BitPay right now, he is so full of shit in everything he says on every level. This is literally why Bitcoin exists, so that somebody cannot prevent you from spending or receiving money. Like, this company is almost as big of a joke as Coinbase. I mean, like, seriously, think about the irony of this, right? Like, just let that settle in your brain.
Well, Shinobi, I believe the last time he was on an interview where he made a fool of himself, he referred to a popular adult content site using Bitcoin as Stupotica. So maybe I think maybe the problem is it just doesn't cater to his taste, you know, but I don't think he's gonna step in and like, you know, defend BitPay or something.
So people's rights only matter when you agree with what they're doing. I see what's going on in Roger's head. I get it now.
Well, this is just like, I mean, like, it really does. I mean, if you're still in that system and they are doing these sort of things and you're still a Bcasher, then, you know, yeah, you found your devotees to move to wherever Roger land is going to be. So
yeah, so just for clarification, a number of years ago, actually, I looked into with someone else. I got to see how Bitcoin actually works for a lot of these services. I didn't actually see anything, but so they need the kind of thing like Lightning, where you make small micropayments over a short period of time that eventually, you know, goes into an actual transaction, then you use it. Like something like Lightning would be perfect for that kind of situation because of how they actually use Bitcoin and how the interface is set up and when the payments are made and how they kind of make the structure of Bitcoin payments into a kind of game. So something like Lightning would be perfect. And so that's why I'm kind of disappointed that, you know, Roger is saying Bitcoin Cash transactions are so fast and they can be small with little fees. Like, if that was true, then that would be perfect for that industry because that's actually how they use micropayments a lot. So the fact that he's kind of ignoring that scenario and he, you know, publicly insulted someone who's using it for that reason, that's real not a good marketing strategy, Roger.
And it shows his complete and utter hypocrisy. He talks like a libertarian. He talks like an ANCAP, or a voluntarist, what have you. And he's just full of shit. And in instances like this, like the fact that he is not out there screaming at the top of his lungs about this, like what more do you need to see before you realize he is completely full of shit?
Yeah, he's willing to, you know, embarrass everyone at a conference by hiring booth babes to, you know, market his coin and, you know, have these fake tattoos across their chest. But he's not actually willing to, you know, make his coin, or at least care, as, you know, the CEO of Bitcoin.com. He's not really willing to care about an industry that makes like a lot of the early use of Bitcoin.
Yeah, if anybody else is thinking what I'm thinking, which is one, the mail form is absolutely disgusting, and two, I'm already married to a naked lady. That's a Homer Simpson quote.
Well, the part about the male form being disgusting is obviously that is a very divided opinion.
No, that's an objective fact. Even women will only put up with it for, in the right circumstances. No, what I was going to say is that, obviously censorship of porn is going to be one of the more like politically appealing things to at least a significant percentage of our listeners. It's probably a super small percentage, but whatever. But the whole point is that this is censorship of transactions.
JW, any man in the audience is going to be inwardly furious about this. Don't lie. Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah, because so many people have to pay for porn nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel for you guys, but what I was going to say is that this is important to all of us because just to tie it back to something that's going to be probably appealing to the other side of the spectrum. When Bank of America and these guys or Visa is talking about the possibility of censoring all transactions where firearms are involved, right? So you can't go in and you can't buy a handgun to protect your family or whatever. It's the same thing, right? We can't be operating in a world where some central authority gets to decide what you can and can't buy and sell if you want to have anything that resembles freedom.
Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, what you want to do, what kind of commerce you want to engage in, as long as you do so voluntarily and it does not bring harm to others, it's nobody else's fucking business. Like, period. That is a huge part of the reason I'm here. And to see one of the oldest companies in this space, like, start walking down that road of just being the complete antithesis of what Bitcoin was made for, it's disgusting. And to see somebody who was a very vocal advocate for Bitcoin for so long, like, turn around and start doing the kind of bullshit that Roger has been doing. And then in this instance of everything Bitcoin is being about, effectively having spit shot in its face, where's his outrage? Where's his screaming? It's nowhere, because he's full of shit. And real quick before I forget, like, to anybody who actually operates a business or receives payments in Bitcoin, BTC Pay server, it's the entire BitPay stack forked. It's literally just swapping things over if anything is already set up for BitPay. And the only problem with that is if you're cashing out to fiat right away, you're going to need to figure out some solution to that. But I mean, if you're really here to accept Bitcoin and not the dollars at the end of the day, like, please use this. Like, stop supporting this business. They are not supporting Bitcoin. Like, to encourage them to continue handing your money over to them is funding an enemy of Bitcoin, somebody who is going to completely undermine what this was created for.
Yeah, it's just upsetting. I don't even know what to say other than it's these guys, they've been around in the space for a long time and they've talked Bitcoin game for a long time, and to see them actually go these routes where censorship resistance is just like, that's the plan, and we've got this downward difficulty adjustment, and we got a hard fork coming up. This is all just part of the plan, and that's where it's like, yeah, if you're still on that side, if you're going Bcash's side, then it's just like, yeah, you're missing the greater point here. And even from the guys that were speaking like the greater point earlier in this whole history of Bitcoin, it's aggravating up to a point to where it's just like, okay, well, now your intention has been shown to where I'm not going to take you seriously anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I guess next thing up, if you're living in New York, lawmakers are considering revisiting the bit license. I mean, part of I really hate when articles kind of dramatize things like this, but in the meeting it was asked, anyone in the crowd that does not think the Bitcoin or the bit license needs to be reformed, silence. and then a few seconds later, laugh at the awkward silence. But it gets the point across. Even amongst the regulators in New York, like, they are starting to acknowledge that there are serious problems with this regulation. And one of the things they're digging into is explicitly how businesses other than exchanges, or those who deal with like legacy fiat and other financial institutions, like, are pretty much being slapped with all this regulation that shouldn't really apply to them. And that distinction needs to be accounted for in like how they handle regulating this space. And I mean, I know this is a touchy issue. A lot of Bitcoiners like to be private. They don't like to wind up on lists or draw too much attention to themselves. But one of the big problems with this is Bitcoiners don't show up to things like this. They don't show up and voice their opinion. They don't give their input or perspective on things. And I mean, if you want to actually see sensible regulation and not just ignore regulation as an individual, that's kind of something that you need to do. Otherwise, they're not going to hear the other side, and they're just going to act off of their own perceptions, their own take of the situation.
Right. Like, yeah, you know, you need some Bitcoiners to show up to some of those meetings to try and get them in the right direction, because, yeah, this one size fits all approach for Bitcoin, you know, companies just wasn't the right way. Like we were just talking about, Wyoming's, you know, pronged approach about a utility token, a crypto, and an ICO seems smart. And, you know, I swear they better learn. I mean, like, maybe there's not many Bitcoiners showing up because that's the belly of the beast there when it comes to like Wall Street and all that information and how many Bitcoiners are over there. Whereas you really see Bitcoiners, I don't know, showing up in like Quebec and like places like Seattle and Denver and San Fran and places where the legacy systems aren't that prevalent. And, you know, if they don't figure it out, they'll be left in the dust, right? Like, I mean, you know, if there's some Bitcoiners in New York, which I know there are, I've talked to some, you know, like, yeah, just sort of try and attend those meetings and see if you can, you know, let them understand that there are these smarter approaches towards regulation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, it's, you know, G. Willikers is kind of giving me shit in the chat box. Don't petition your masters to grant you freedom. But I mean, it's, you know, like I said, G, it's a personal thing. I personally am just ignoring most of the things going on. I don't care. Go away. Goodbye. But there are people out there who don't do that, who choose not to, who think the risks of doing so are too high. And for people in those situations who want more sensible regulation, I mean, if that is what you want out of the situation, more sensible regulations, then you have to actually go do something to create that situation. It's not going to just happen on its own.
Right. I mean, like, whenever I was moving out of the Gulf Coast region and I was looking for areas of the country, I mean, I was really kind of going on like, where's the mindset of at least like the system's a bit broken and we need to change it. Colorado, you know, there's already people, you know, accepting Bitcoin for payment and like on a, you know, a basis as far as like I've heard, you know, well, somebody wants to buy a piece of property and they would rather accept Bitcoin. And I mean, we've done reports where somebody was selling an old prison for 88 Bitcoin here in Colorado. And yeah, if you don't get out there and start speaking, you know, this language outside of the social networks online and actually your social networks on the ground, then you won't see a change. You're going to have to move to where the change is. And I mean, like, some of those places are so embedded in these old systems that you might have to move out of that region eventually if you don't sort of take the initiative to jump up and say like, hey, you know, this place is doing it wrong. And anybody else around me feel the same way, and see if we can't make that change. Because if you don't stand up and speak, nobody's going to do it for you.
I don't know, man. I'll give you guys that it could possibly be productive. I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence. I'm glad when people do try. But I think in general, we're way better off just building new tools than trying to convince people to behave differently.
I agree with you. Like I was saying, you know, if they don't stand up and learn, then they'll get left behind.
Well, see, that's the beauty of the thing, JW, is the people building tools aren't going to stop. And other people doing other things or not doing other things really has no bearing on that. So, I mean, it's, you know what I mean? It's not a binary choice there.
Yeah, that's true. But if there's a developer out there that is thinking about going and, I don't know, doing a march or something, I would just say probably not the best strategy. Just, write some code. Or if there's a young person that's
not the best timing.
No, I just don't think it's a great strategy. I don't think I've seen it be very effective throughout history. I don't think you can give me a whole lot of good examples of that sort of political action resulting in change. But I know it's part of the American religion.
But didn't you call Bitcoin a mission? Didn't you call? You're the one who said that.
It is a mission, but it's a so the goal is the same, right? The goal is individual liberty and freedom, but you could do that in the sort of cypherpunk movement style where you write tools and you build stuff and you just put it out there, and you know that if it works better, it's going to be really hard for the government to keep people from grabbing it. Or the alternative, and you can do a combination of this, but in semi-simplistic terms, it's one or the other, right? Or you can take that same amount of time and you can write petitions and you can call your congressman and do all that sort of stuff. And my contention is just that the building tools cypherpunk movement strategy is far more cost effective and making a lot more progress than anything that could be done on the other side. So if anybody, for what it's worth, if anybody wants my opinion, put that energy into learning how to code and start coding. But whatever.
But see, you can have a plan A trying to make people be sensible, and you can have a plan B, just ignore them and do shit anyway. And I hope you understand the irony of what plan B is there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of am. Yeah, I mean, if we do want change to happen in this sort of big way, eventually some areas are going to have to break into adopting these systems, and that will take at least some sort of on-the-ground political movement. You can't just have everybody coding their way into this existence. I mean, eventually somebody's got to get out there and socially get people together. It's not everybody's just going to code their way onto the internet into the right economic system. Timing doesn't permit that. I mean, we've got other people to worry about. Not everybody's a coder. I can't code my way into Bitcoin. I found my way into Bitcoin, and it was through people that were socially talking about it and getting people into the system. So I just have a little bit of a different viewpoint that it's going to take a little of this and a little of that to where we get there. It's not going to be one single thing. My goodness, you guys are going crazy with this whole sexual attraction between men and women and whether or not it's real here. What is going on? Y'all got to let me know, because I just see the chat going, and I'm I'm not paying attention to this. What is sapiosexuality?
Oh, man, you're blowing us up over here. You're blowing us.
I'm sorry, but there's this whole other side conversation going on where it's that discussion about male beauty has not ended. It has not ended.
The censorship of the porn site did spawn a little bit of a side conversation, and I think we've all agreed now that the male form is truly disgusting.
No, yes. We have not agreed that.
Yes, we have.
We have not. Oh, see, this proves my point, because I said that that was based on most likely if you're male, you would find the male form to be ugly, whereas if you're female, you'd think the opposite, which is true in this case. I'm a female from all the males on this panel, so there we go. Anyway, if anyone's curious,
I'm not saying that you're attracted to women, but there's no way that you think that they're disgusting. They're not dragging around parts and pieces that looked like they were last minute.
Don't make us make this.
What men are you hanging around?
All right, let's just I don't know. It's you're jumping onto this level of you understand what a woman's thinking. Man, don't even try to get on that level.
As someone
conversation that was just entertaining us.
Okay, not made as someone who understands how the female body functions, I do not find. I think you are underestimating the amount of grossness involved. But anyway,
it's all closed up and put away. It's not just getting dragged around. There's some stuff that has to happen.
Like, she made some good
not
points
forever,
there.
not only for the first part of your life.
Look, I'm not into the male form or anything, but I can understand, like, there's definitely a different perspective, and it's like they, like the mechanics of being, like, bad and rambunctious and not this sort of thing or whatever. I mean, that's where it's like, I don't know, to try and pretend like you're gonna understand that they they say, no, all women, they're definitely beautiful, and men are they're utilitarian at best.
I'm totally
like, don't even try to understand it, man. Like, just don't even try. Just understand that you don't understand. That's the only thing you can understand, that you don't.
I can't believe.
Jeez, AK is getting.
Yeah, I'm sorry I dragged this into the digest, but it's just like I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Well, I don't. Okay, so I don't know. It got to the point where we were debating whether sapiosexuality is a thing, and my only thought about, because if you're not familiar with the term, okay, Shinobi doesn't think it's a thing, but just in case anyone's not aware of the term, sapiosexuality is a term to describe someone who is attracted to others based on their intelligence, which I think in most cases it's kind of overblown, but I definitely think because I don't think that physical attraction is never a factor. But there was an article I read recently where they actually looked into it, and it appears to be a thing. You can be attracted to people based on, or have intelligence be a major factor in who you're attracted to. And to me, that actually makes sense. Maybe not historically, but especially now that we're living in, what's called the knowledge economy, where being able to process and analyze information is very important to how, your ability to rise in the ranks of the economy or advance in the economy. And so to me, it makes sense to have, a large subset of your population, especially in case of women, be attracted to someone who is able to, have features or characteristics that communicate that they have a significant amount of intelligence, which would obviously, predict their ability to, or increase their chances of being successful.
Just real quick.
Science.
I realized I had to say, like, attractiveness from like actual physical attractiveness.
Well, like this, just real quick.
Because I feel differentiation.
Well, that's just like, I don't know, like we're in the time of the internet now, and there's more discussion going on about people's idea of what they find attractive. And I mean, just to go like on the weird of like, we don't understand things, is like, there's people that are attracted to diseased people because they want to have a disease. Like there's weird attractions out there. To even think that you're going on their level and going to understand it is not. We're all individuals in this. You have your own picture of beauty, eyes in the beholder.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap off this segment of Block Digest pseudoscience.
All right. Oh, come on, it's not pseudoscience. I'm not saying it's a real thing. I'm saying it would make sense in a knowledge economy type environment.
I'm trolling you. It's post.
And I did not start the conversation. People are saying this is Women's Digest. Are you serious? Yeah. I didn't even start this conversation.
I'm sorry I brought it out, but you cannot ignore it. It's like it's been going on. So, all right, let's just keep moving on. We'll talk about it after the digest.
Let's just agree that I'm the ultimate troll. And not only did I cause this whole chaos from a joke, but I got it all blamed on Janine.
No, I'm sorry. I am the ultimate troll, and I will troll all of you by getting back to news. Georgia is considering following Arizona's example and accepting Bitcoin for taxes. A bill is being pushed forward by Senators Michael Williams and Joshua McCoon. So, guys, let's slowly count this down and enjoy the process of watching America's federal government splinter into irrelevance.
Yeah, right. This is like we were just saying in the New York story. It's like if they don't catch it and change, other people will. And like, like we're saying, if you don't stand up and try and change the social circles around you and the region around you and all that to understand that this is the way things should go, you'll probably end up moving to an area like Arizona or Wyoming or, you know, where these regulations are coming into place. So prime example of just like, yeah, I mean, like either learn or get left behind.
Yep. I mean, like the kind of potential that creates to be less dependent on the federal government as time moves on, it's like it's weed legalization all over again. And it's just going to keep exacerbating that until the federal government is pretty much irrelevant. And really, the only reason I would say it has any relevance right now is because so many state and municipal governments are pretty much dependent on federal tax income to be able to pay their bills.
Yeah, it's one where, you know, once one of these models really pops up to spring up a local economy that is actually competitive in the way that it does accounting and the money management of its citizens, it's really going to take off to those areas where they understand these problems and they're looking for a solution. And that might be when the real fracturing is like, yeah, people are moving to get to the places where they think things are going to change and things will stick the same. It's definitely, we've said in the shows before, it's like the United States is not so united anymore. We see that in regulations around the country. And this is sort of one of those things that will definitely keep sort of fracturing up the culture.
Mm-hmm. I notice you always get oddly quiet when I start talking about positive things that are going to happen to governments, JW. Why is that?
I don't know what you're talking about. I am such a fan of the use of violence against innocent people that I just want them to get more and more efficient and more effective and make smarter and smarter decisions.
That's where you got to understand there's different regions with different government policies and different incentives and different everything, man. Coming from the Gulf Coast, moving to Colorado, being in Afghanistan, spending time in Mexico, on the East Coast, you got to get around and understand there's areas of the country that are actually taking care of people and making sure that people are at least sticking in a direction. And it's like, you know, like we're saying, if there's already cannabis laws approved here in Colorado and other states, like there's definitely, and it's like a structure here that is within the government that doesn't like the way things are done. So you got to work with it a little bit.
All right, look, if you guys are gonna call me out and make me make a comment on this stuff, taxation is theft. If you don't give somebody your money under the threat of violence, that's called protection money. And even if you have a funny hat or a seal or a building,
you pay your taxes.
A gangster. I pay my taxes in the exact same way.
Well, then how come?
Wait a minute. Wait, let me finish this.
All right.
In the exact same way that I would pay protection money. I do it because I don't want to have my ass kicked or be raped in prison, not because of any other reason.
Well, right. So how are you going to change the system without like everybody just flipping over and not paying their taxes and coding their way into the right existence?
I don't know, man, but that's what Bitcoin's all about, brother. Good luck collecting taxes.
And that's not what human society is about. Not everybody's like that. I mean, there's definitely people that you have to go out and convince, and you have to grab them and say that, like, look, things are not going the right way. And I mean, like, eventually, yeah, it gets to the point to where you realize, like, you can't change that structure around you, and you have to move somewhere else where at least the idea of change is relevant and in the system, to where you could maybe start convincing those people. And
how are you going to maintain politics in the nation state when you can't print money and you can't tax?
Like, JW, this is what like I feel like you and me and Rick are all looking at the same endpoint, but we're not going to get there by teleporting. There's going to be gradual steps in that direction until we're just there and we don't realize it.
Yeah.
And when I look at things like this, like, these are those baby steps in that direction. And I see these as positive things because it shows that's the trajectory that we're on.
Yeah, like that's where it's like I agree that there should be like a common law and real legitimate courts, and that there should be like local self-sustaining economies where people agree on things together, and there shouldn't be taxation as theft. You should agree with your taxation, and you should maybe, you know, have input as to where those dollars are going and everything like that. But it's just like, yeah, I don't see us going from A to B, just like, or A to like, that'd be like Z. You know, we got to go through these steps to get there. And that's where I see, like, you know, we got to work with our environment. We can't just say like, well, damn it, it's wrong. Flip the table until it works. That's not how history and human evolution works.
I'd like to see the plan then, because if Bitcoin keeps moving forward at this pace, it's going to happen fast, not slow.
Can't plan anarchy. You just let the chips fall.
Yeah, we just put the tools out there and see how it shakes out. But I think it's going in the positive direction. Like we could say, like, you know, there definitely is a movement behind the negative direction as well. But I think the positive direction will win out, just because, like we've said, you know, once people realize there's a choice between the old system and this new system and what it's trying to achieve, the consumer will make the decision.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great mathematical equation from anarchy order, right?
Yeah, I don't know that equation yet. We're still figuring that one out. I think it's got something to do with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. So I guess any last thoughts? Anybody? I think we were rounding this off at a nice even 2 hours.
Yeah, just a final thought is let everybody know that we're coming up on our next hiatus. You know, we need to take a little bit of a break to do some travels for you know, for own little, got a visit here and there and do some things, and but it should just be like a couple weeks, 3 weeks or something like that, and we'll be back. And just go ahead and let y'all know the heads up. Like I think our next episode will be our last episode before the hiatus.
I mean, it might be, but we should have time for Tuesday and then Saturday, maybe, right? Everybody plan on air.
So one more week, like I'm just letting just a heads up to the fans out there that that's coming up, because we just recently discussed it, and it's something where we didn't really know when it was going to happen, but just a heads up, it's coming up.
Mm-hmm. And then Janine's ready to
go. I promise this won't start like a whole unrelated hour-long discussion. So yeah, this was a tweet made by the Adhar account. I think a few days ago. If you check the date really quick, I saw it, I think 2 days ago. Yeah. So it was a tweet originally made by the Adhar Twitter account that said that basically any child below 5 years of age, it gets colored blue in the Adhar system and is known, I guess it signifies that they're a child. But once the child becomes 5 years old or older, there is a mandatory biometric update. Because if anyone knows, this is why you have to get it's why you have to get your passport photo retaken, because obviously, you know, as you, especially if you're a kid, you have to do it more frequently, because obviously the structure of your face is changing, and it makes it a lot harder for the system to identify you if your picture doesn't match your actual face. But in Adhar, that's the same kind of situation. But they make it mandatory, whereas passports are not a mandatory thing. That's an optional thing. I think as much as like 50% of the U.S. population doesn't actually has a up-to-date valid passport. It's kind of strange, because a passport is like, that's like the one identity document that is like the most essential to me, because I move around a lot. But yeah, the Adhar system would say that if basically once your child becomes 5, they have up until the age of 7 to get this biometric update, and if they don't, then they will get suspended. I don't know what they mean necessarily by suspended, because they didn't clarify that. I don't know if that means like suspended from the system entirely, like they just never have a chance to have an identity document, or if
they delete
you get deleted from the system. Yeah. I mean, I assumed at first, because suspension is usually used in the context of like school. So I thought, oh, you get suspended from school, you're not allowed to go to school until you have an identity document. But that doesn't seem like the case, because people really reacted to this very strongly. And so I think it means that you won't have a chance to actually have an identity document if you don't have that done by the age of 7, which is really disgusting, because I would not want to live in a country where children who, you know, the children have no say in this. It's all their parents' responsibility, and I don't think any system that punishes children for the either, because their parents might do it on a moral basis that they don't agree with this, because it's basically a giant surveillance system, and it's extremely insecure because it's already been hacked. And so I don't think I would consider a parent who doesn't sign up their child for this thing to be necessarily a bad parent. I would in some cases consider them to be a good parent. But I definitely wouldn't agree that, like, let's say if you do consider a parent that doesn't sign their child up for the system to be a bad parent, you shouldn't be punishing the child for the decisions of their parents. That just doesn't make sense to me. That's not fair.
Yeah, that's a pretty Orwellian right there. Oh man, just trying to capture kids' biometric data as they're going up and it's aggravating.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. JW, I hate you, but there you go.
So my final thought is that yes, the mail form is fully disgusting, and that I submit this as evidence. And also, I'm going to be on WCN in about an hour, so join me there.
That's a brilliant piece of evidence for that, but
I'm sorry. Sorry. I find that to be an
Guys.
example of a male intelligence that I find disgusting.
Morality, social construct, and blockchain is a programming language for the fate of men.
It's like, it is getting so weird in that narrative as far as just like, what's Bitcoin and core is a man and cash is a woman, and now it's all about, I don't know. It's getting so crazy over there with the whole morality stuff.
It would I don't know. I have one of my like turnoffs is if a person comes from Florida, because that always that always seems to be. It's like I don't think I've ever. Sorry if to any of our viewers who are from Florida, but there's a reason there's this whole Florida man meme where it seems like, a lot of the weirdest crimes in the United States seem to be done by men from Florida.
Now that we've insulted roughly 7% of the global population between New Zealand and Florida, back to regular programming.
All right, Acnic.
It's also Florida is where all the SIM swapping has been coming from. A lot of the people doing the SIM swapping in the cryptocurrency community are from Florida.
Oh, yeah, Florida is oh god, we better not start it.
Yeah, that's why I would never attend the Miami Bitcoin conference, because seriously, you are going to get suckered into giving out your business card with your phone number, and your phone is going to get wrecked.
All right, Acnix, last thoughts. Come on, cough it up.
Yeah, Venezuela, good walk. It's gonna.
All right, and I guess my last thought is, everybody go on Twitter and call Roger Ver out for being a complete hypocritical piece of shit that has nothing to say when the biggest payment processor in this ecosystem stops selectively processing one kind of payment. Call him out. Like, seriously. I would, but he blocked me more than a year ago. And yeah, I'm really upset by that, because it was a lot of fun.
He blocked you so hard that you put a picture of it in your Twitter header.
Yeah, for those who haven't looked, you should go look at the background image of my Twitter account. But on that note, I think we're gonna cut it here so JW can go rest a second before he pops in on WCN. Everybody should check him out over there. But I guess like things, subscribe things if you want. If not, why are you here still? And goodbye.
Later, everyone.
Laters.